Hi, my name is Tiana Karamayas and I'm a Cavoodle puppy coach and breeder for Noodle Way and River City puppies. As a coach, my philosophy is simple. A Cavoodle should always complement your lifestyle, not complicate it. And this is the foundation to everything I teach. For almost the past decade, I have been working in the breeding, training, grooming, and veterinary sectors of the small animal industry. I've also been raising Cavoodles for the past 16 years, so I have definitely learned a thing or two about the breed along the way. Now this podcast is all about Cavoodles. Raising Cavoodles, training Cavoodles, grooming Cavoodles, breeding Cavoodles, and how to shape the behavior of a Cavoodle puppy. So if you're a Cavoodle parent or you are looking at adding a Cavoodle to your family soon, then this podcast is for you. New episodes will be released each Tuesday morning, and you can follow me across all social media under the name @OodleWay for more tips and advice on Cavoodles. Thanks for tuning in. Hello and welcome back to episode 10 of the Cavoodle Coach podcast Rebooted. My name is Tiana Karamayas and I'm your host. So, in today's episode, it's actually an inspiration of a conversation I had on Instagram last week, and that was a conversation about my next door neighbor's dog, who every morning when I open up my blinds and my curtains from my bedroom barks at me. Without fail, it'll go woof, 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 and it'll just continue barking. And then the owner, all she does is say the dog's name and the dog keeps barking. And so I jumped onto Instagram to talk a little bit about this and why the dog wasn't listening. And I got so many people saying, oh my gosh, this is just such a good reminder. It makes so much sense now. Thank you for this. So I thought, you know what, we'll put it on the podcast and I'm going to add in a few more tips on why your puppy might not be listening and why they might be giving you some selective hearing. So let's get into it. 3 reasons why your puppy is not listening to you. Number 1, we're going to start with the tip that I had the other day, and that is because you might be only using your dog's name as an instruction, and that is not going to work. And what I mean by that is if your dog is doing something like barking and you go, Jack, 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 which is exactly what my neighbor does, the dog isn't going to listen to you. And the reason is your dog's name, it's not a recall, it's not a command, it's not an instruction. Your dog's name is simply telling your dog that, hey, I'm talking to you. And then the dog is going to wait for the next instruction. And if you don't give another instruction, it's going to continue the behavior it was doing. So if your puppy is barking, or if your puppy is jumping, or if your puppy is doing something you just don't want them to do, just make sure you're not just saying their name to tell them off, because it's not going to tell them anything. And if you keep using their name repetitively, and you don't follow it with an instruction, and then you don't follow it with a reward when they listen to you, the name becomes very unimportant. Your dog will stop responding to their name entirely because you sound like a parrot. And if someone was in the house and they were saying, you know, my name's Tiana, so if they were going, Tiana, 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 and I go, yeah, and then they just say nothing else, I would get so annoyed. And then the next time they say Tiana, I'm probably much more likely to just ignore them because they're just saying my name for apparently no reason. And that is what is happening with your puppy. So whenever you talk to your puppy, make sure you remember their name is not a recall, it's not a command, it's not an instruction. Their name simply means, hey, I'm talking to you, here's what I want you to do. And then you follow it with the instruction. And then when they listen to you, you follow it with the reward. And that bleeds into my second reason why your puppy isn't listening. And this is more particularly for recall, which is one of those things that when you have a young puppy, they tend to do really well. And then as they get older, they go through their teenage stage, as we like to call it. And then they seem to just stop listening and they stop responding to you for the recall. And more often than not, the reason why they stop responding from the recall is because you stop giving them treats to say thank you for listening. When you first start training your puppy, you always have treats on you. You've got it in your head that whenever I'm doing anything with my puppy, I've got to reward them. And then we get a bit complacent, we get a bit lazy, and we stop bringing those treats with us. And I'm here to tell you that if you want a really strong recall in your dog, those treats can never stop. Whenever you recall your dog over, it needs to be followed with a reward. And we want to be selective with our recall. We don't want to just call them over for no apparent reason. We want to always make sure it's intentional. And as your dog gets older and as your puppy gets older, and they start going, on walks, they start going to really interesting and very amazing places, that treat has to also increase in value. You can't keep using the same treat you used when they were 8 weeks old and very new to the world. If you were using liver treats at 8 weeks old, when they're 5 months old, you need to be increasing the value of that treat, maybe to some boiled chicken, something really, really tasty, so that it's more enticing than the environment they are in. As your puppy gets older, as their brain develops, they are able to comprehend the world much better. They're able to think, they're able to understand, and they'll soon learn that if, Mum, if you're calling me over for just a liver treat, a tiny little piece of a liver treat, that's really not as rewarding as running towards this rock or tree over here. And then they stop listening. So when it comes to your puppy, if they're not listening to you, check yourself. 1, am I actually giving them an instruction? 2, am I actually rewarding them with a reward that is equal or more value to whatever they're already doing? That is really, really important. I'm going to add this in here. If you are using a reward and your puppy still is not coming over to you, and this tends to happen, I hear this a lot when you have taught your puppy to be off-leash in obviously off-leash friendly areas. And at first, when you had a young puppy, they were really responsive, and every time you called them over, they came back to you and they were doing really, really well. But then they got older and they stopped listening to you. If that's the case, we also need to implement the rule and the boundary, and we say, look, Jack, I'm using Jack this entire episode of this podcast. Jack, if you're not going to listen to me, you don't get to go off leash anymore. So what you want to do is you get a really long leash. You can get leashes that are like 10 meters long, and you pop them on that leash so that you can control the distance away they are. And you go back to basics and you start letting them off, 2 meters ahead of you, and you recall them back with a very yummy treat. And then you let them go 3 meters ahead of you, and then you recall them back again with that yummy treat. And only once they start responding properly every single time would you then take them off leash again. And if you did that and then they don't listen to you, back on the leash they go. We have to make sure the boundaries and the rules that we implement with our dog are consistent and are also fair. So be really, really clear in your communication with your dog. Lay down those boundaries and those rules. They can either listen to them and they get to reap the rewards like being off leash, or if they're not going to listen to them, we need to go back to basics and retrain them so that they are not going to get into any mischief or any danger. Because if they're off leash and they're taking off down the beach and then they take off towards the park, which is near the road, well, that's very dangerous. So we need to make sure those boundaries are consistently implemented, and don't be fooled into thinking that your training with your puppy stops after those first few weeks. You are likely going to have to do retraining with them quite a few times just to reinforce those boundaries and those rules, and to teach them how to continue living within your family, within your environment, as the world gets more and more exciting. The final tip I have for why your dog or your puppy might not be listening to you is because you are using too many words. And what I mean by that is, the longer we have our puppy, the more we start to speak to them like they're our children. We start to narrate our day. We start to speak to them and go, oh, Jack, I just really don't want to go to work today. I'm so tired. And we start telling them all these stories. And your dog loves it. They love to listen to you speak to them. But we start using all these words and we start speaking to them as if they're human, as if they can understand us. And unfortunately, they really can't. So whenever it comes to actually asking something of our dogs, we have to remember not to use too many extra words. So rather than saying, Jack, I need you to come here, we're going to have some breakfast, and then we're going to go outside to the toilet, you need to shorten that down. We need to go, Jack, come. Yes, give him a treat when he comes over. Then you go, eat your breakfast or whatever you've taught him. You make it very short, sweet. And then you go, Jack, toilet, outside. 3 words tells them exactly what to do. No confusion, no fluff. Because as soon as you start adding in all these extra words that would make a proper sentence in English, your dog starts, you lose your dog. They go, wait, what? What do you actually want me to do? So just remind yourself, hey, when we actually want to tell our dog something and we want to communicate something to them, we need to make sure it's very succinct and we only use the words that have actual meaning and tell them an instruction. So Jack means I'm talking to you. Outside means go outside. Toilet is the behavior I want you to do while outside. So Jack, outside toilet, would tell him what to do. Jack, let's go outside. I need you to go to the toilet so we can go. Your puppy has no idea what you're saying. So remember to keep it short, sweet, succinct so that your puppy actually knows what you're saying. And in addition to this, if I have one final tip for you, one final tip from one trainer to hopefully a family with a dog, is that your puppy is the way that they communicate is through body language. That's the only way they can communicate to us, and the easiest way for them to understand what we're saying to them is also through body language. So if you really, really, really want a puppy who is going to listen extremely well every time you tell them something and ask something of them, you need to pair every single instruction with a specific hand signal. So sit needs a hand signal, stay needs a hand signal, toilet needs a hand signal, recall needs a hand signal. The more hand signals that you can give your puppy, the better they're going to respond, because you're pairing not only a word that they know, but a body language they know. And then it means that this command, this instruction has so much more meaning, and it's so much easier for your puppy to understand what you're saying. And I'm going to go back to that example. If you're on the beach and your puppy is off lead on a beach and they're running off and you need them to come back to you, and all you say is, "Jack, come." They're hearing this in the wind. It's not really loud. It's really easy to ignore or to miss. Whereas if you say, "Jack," he looks at you and you get down on the ground and you give him a really big physical body language signal for him to come to you, that's going to be a lot easier for him to understand rather than just your words. So just remember, if you can implement a body language signal with the word and the instruction, you're going to get a much better response from your puppy. So that's the episode. That is 3 reasons why your puppy isn't listening to you. The first one was using your puppy's name as the instruction, which is not the case. Your puppy's name means I'm talking to you. You then need to follow it with the command or the instruction, and then the reward, of course. The second tip, or the second reason why your puppy is not listening to you, is because you're using too many words in a sentence. Keep it succinct. Keep it literally just the words your puppy knows. So, "Jack, outside toilet." That tells him what to do, not "Jack, let's go outside to the toilet. We need to go. Hurry up." He has no idea. He's a dog. He does not speak English. And then the third and final reason why your puppy is ignoring you is because you stop rewarding them. We have to remember that the reward has to match the level of distraction. So if your puppy is in a highly distracting environment, the treat needs to be highly, highly, highly rewarding to give them a reason to stop whatever they're doing. You can't go and trade, if you had a child on a seesaw in a park having the best day of his or her life, and you say, what's a child's name? Tom, come here, come eat some broccoli. He's not going to do it. But if you said, "Tom, come here, and for coming here and listening to me, I am going to give you this yummy..." I feel like this is a really bad example because you shouldn't be giving your kids all these treats like this. We're talking about dogs here. They're a little bit different. But in this example, it would be like, "I'm going to give you a gummy bear." Obviously, the kid's going to jump off the playground and come over to you. Not that I'm encouraging you to do that with your children, but for dogs who don't speak English, that is what we need to do. We need to make sure that whatever we're going to give them in exchange for listening to us is of higher value than the activity they were previously doing. Okay, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have, please leave me a rating and a review. If you had like a mind-blowing moment when you're like, "Oh my gosh, I have made this mistake with my puppy so many times," leave me a review and tell me, because I really sometimes this podcast feels like I'm just speaking to no one and I'm just speaking to a camera. So it's really nice to hear from you if you have listened to it and if you found it helpful. So leave me a rating and review, pretty please. I would love it. And I will be back next week for the next episode. This has been your Cavoodle coach, Tiana Karamayas. I'll see you later.